Welcome back to Danny Rant. This week we have a very special guest. Like every week we have a special guest. I have a rave legend, music producer, the man that goes by the name Honeysmack. How are you, David?
I'm fantastic, Danny. How are you?
I'm good. So thank you for coming down today, firstly.
No, thank you for having me. I hope I get to bore the shit out of your audience.
I don't think that's going to happen. So firstly, for those who don't know who Honeysmack is there a little bit of like a brief that you can give us before we start the pod?
Oh, fuck. Well, you know, my whole professional life has been evolved around electronic dance music, techno, performing, making, teaching, theorizing, everything. So, yeah, it's good because I should actually have my 30-second elevator pitch, shouldn't I? So, you know, artist, producer, educator.
Rave legend, I'd say.
Okay, well, you know, that's very kind of you. I'm trying to be humble, but, you know, we'll see how far my ego will let me, you know, be humble.
So we'll go back to this. So you originally get into acid house kind of in the 80s, right? So I would say, and this is probably a big call, and you may not agree with me, that you're one of the guys who sort of helped hero electronic music into Australia, right? So you're obviously doing acid house and stuff like that. You're talking about like every picture in these raves that are around about the same time as you were sort of making your music. Not that you were necessarily related to them, but you're one of the guys who was sort of like moving forward in that space well before anybody else was doing it. Right or wrong?
I guess that's right. That's what's I've been labelled with. So sure, I'll take the credit. So some of the credit, I should say.
Yeah. So starting there is like, how and why did you get into electronic music so early? And what was sort of going on at that space and time to make it, I guess it was niche back then?
Well, first, we didn't know that we were part of anything kind of big, or we didn't think that we were having an impact. We just had a love for electronic dance music, and it went by different genres and different names, even back then. So it was a catch-all under the word, say, techno, and before that was kind of acid, and before that was kind of house music. So no one was really concerned with labels as much as they are today, given the commercial viability of electronic dance music. But how did I get into it? I guess growing up in the late 70s, early 80s, it was a great time of experimental music and pop music as well. So I would be hearing disco and early hip hop. My parents, where I lived, where I grew up, our next door neighbours had the first disco in Melbourne called Madison's. And they brought out people like Sylvester. This was in the late 70s. And when they went down or finished up, my father bought turntables and a whole lot of Euro disco records just as an opportunity. My father wasn't necessarily into it. He just kind of grabbed all this stuff. And then as I became a teen, I started listening to these records, thinking like, what the fuck is this? This is like, awesome. But I was also right into the whole punk thing as well. So the kind of the American West Coast punk thing, like Black Flag and Dead Kennedys and Circle Jerks. So I kind of described it as being two tribes. You had people that were into the disco, and then you had the punk tribe as well, and the two didn't meet back then. And it was when kind of hip-hop, I guess, came along, and more so acid house in the late 80s, that kind of merged those two tribes together. So it was just natural. And why was I into electronic music, or why did I get into it? I was right into B movies, exploitation cinema. So I actually wanted to make exploitation movies, horror movies, like, Giorgio Moroder, and they would experiment a lot with, even, Dario Argento films would experiment with electronic music that you wouldn't hear kind of in Hollywood or commercial films, and thought like, that was probably subconsciously affecting me at the time. And then I went to art school to study film and ended up doing sound and soundtrack, and ended up making this thing called techno.
That makes complete sense now. Like it's kind of full circle. But those early days where you were making soundtracks and then they were using the same elements that eventually turned into techno, like it's kind of a cool way to like look back on it.
Exactly, but I wasn't traditionally musically trained at all. I just wanted to make art. So my ego was so full of myself that I was going to be this amazing creative and wasn't very good at painting, wasn't very good at drawing. But when I was put in front of exploitation cinema and this weird experimental electronic sound, pretty much it was sound because I wasn't learning how to play an instrument. That's where it kind of merged together. It's like, oh, actually, I'm kind of making the stuff I'm hearing in clubs or at raves at the same time.
So the punk stuff, right? You talk about that, but those early sort of 80s, or sorry, late 80s into early 90s, dance music was really punk. Like, you know, you look at it, the kind of ethos of punk, it's sort of outlandish, it's illegal raves, it's sort of experimental. It effectively was a version of punk. When did those two scenes sort of collide?
For me, it collided as I started to do my undergraduate. So when I was late teens, as an early adult, I started to realize how it all started to come together because I wanted to listen to music that challenged me in lots of different ways, and then found a tribe of people who also, you know, wanted to be challenged in the same way. And it was just, punk is also a philosophy. It's not about loud guitars and drums as much it is as a philosophy, a do-it-yourself. Just do it. And it was I think punk is also about freedom. I'm not talking about anything political. I'm talking about, you know, freedom of expression and freedom of self. So that was really important. And that's how it came together in acid house or in early electronic dance music, because you had these old punks back then who were just saying, well, we're just going to put this together. We've got no, academic training or formal training, but we can just put these drum machines and synthesizers together and see what happens. And that's what it was. And that was liberating because I couldn't play guitar or a piano. I still can't read or write any form of traditional music.
So when does it become a scene, right? So obviously it sounds at one point, it's just there's different emerging kind of stuff going on, like hip hop, there's drum machines, there's punk, which is loud sounds. Then acid house becomes a scene in Melbourne at some point. When does that sort of start to happen?
Well, see, the punk in me never wanted to be part of a scene, but we were, I guess in hindsight now looking back, well, we were part of a scene, and hence why you're asking me that question. But back then we didn't feel that we were part of a scene. We had our peers and friends and colleagues and artists who were similar, but we didn't feel that we were a scene as such. I guess there were other people who may have congregated together for commercial reasons, such as the bigger raves and not to shit can those larger raves, but I always felt, and the people close to me at the time, we always felt that we were on the peripheries, you know. We were part of it, but we weren't. You know, okay, so we're embedded in this kind of electronic music, and the sound might be, you know, related to what's being played. But I never felt part of that scene, which is unusual for people to hear. But again, I guess it's part of that kind of rebellious nature that I've always had and always wanting to challenge people all the time. So I know it's not answering your question. I never felt I was part of the scene. So now you can look back and say, okay, well, you were whether you fucking like it or not. So how did I... Ask me the question again. What was the core of the question? It was...
So I guess it's like, you know, at some point you were mucking around making music, and then there's a point where other people want to engage with it. They're punters. They're not people making it. At what point does that start to establish and then become people who are fans of this style of music?
Okay. So to answer the question more specifically and to get off my tangent, it's probably around filter days, Club Filter, at the lounge on a Wednesday night. And then it kind of evolves from there because it's a long-standing underground techno. Remember, it's before the internet. This is before Do we have mobile phones? I can't remember.
Were you talking, what year are you talking, like kind of early 90s?
We're talking early 90s.
Probably not, no.
So a lot of this was word of mouth. You would go to record shops. So Jason, who did Filter with Rod, also had Octave Records with Terry. So the record shop became your hub of information as to what gigs were on, and then you would go to Filter, and that, you know, Octave was in Greville Street. So it became a hub of information. Then but then you had Revolver then open up in, was it 97? And things started to grow. The irony is that, you know, we had that kind of punk attitude, and we weren't driven by money or financial gain, but we all wanted money and we all wanted that notoriety. And the irony is that when it became commercial, did we really want it or not? You know, it posed that whole kind of challenge. So, I think Filter, when it started to become not acceptable, but as you're saying, more people interested and drew people to it. That was for me, I should say. I don't think that's the only point, but I think it was Filter, then Revolver, then a whole lot of very small parties, because it was like there were nights at Dream nightclub, which was in Queensbury Street. I think one of the more famous ones was Hellfire. I never went to Hellfire. No, that wasn't techno. But there were, you know, other like odd nights that came and went around that time in the early, you know, the mid-90s, I should say.
So your mid-90s is when it sort of starts to grow a little, I guess, legs. And so previous to that, what did it look like? I know there was sort of raves, or they were starting to kind of come about. What did the scene look like prior to the kind of, not the boom, but the beginning of it?
I remember going into shops like the Custard Shop, which was Richard and Heidi, who put on Every Picture. And I think one of my earliest memories was like Biology, or another party that was at St Kilda Bath. That was, I think it was like 1990, the New Year's Eve at 1990 at the St Kilda Bath. And that was just like fucking amazing. You didn't know who the DJs really were. This was kind of just before the myth of the DJ came in. But you were in this small rooms, the walls were sweating, one strobe, and these records, this music was being played. You didn't know who it was. You couldn't request songs. There was none of that culture. And then you had slowly things like Pure would open up at the back of the Palace. And again, whole sensory overload. Again, just one flash of light, you know, one strobe. And you'd be hearing music that you've never heard before. And just prior to that, there was Express at Chasers. That was, I think that was 88, 89. And that was when house, techno, acid house, hip house, and hip hop were all just being played in this club. And I think I did like, dare I say, I did like some promotions for Express at the time. It was just easy, just gave free passes to mates who were coming. And then they said, oh, you're getting a lot of people in. Oh, we'll give you some drink. I'm like, okay, I don't really drink. So the drinks were meant for guests, but we thought it was for us. So
those early rave days, were you going to them and were they all legal or some illegal?
They were all legal. They're all legal. They're just, the illegal raves don't, you know, the biggest illegal rave was the one Jason and I put on called Eat the Rich, which was in the city, business card with a phone number. We locked everyone in. Where was it? It was in the city. I don't want to give the location just yet. And we had someone with the sound system, played live. And I remember I was playing live. I was going to the end. Cops are walking in saying, you know, who's running this? Who's the owner? And I was like, oh, confused. Oh, like, yeah, no, he's over there, mate, you know, kind of thing. And but no one got hurt. Everyone behaved. We locked the doors, I think at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. No one complained. Everyone had a good time. Everyone went home happy. That was the most illegal thing I can think of. But earlier on, I don't think we even called it illegal raves. They were just small and underground and run by people who weren't promoters. They were people who were just passionate about giving a platform for this music. That's what it was. It came from a place of passion first before it became a place of, financial gain. That's all. So Jason and I did Jason Rude Boy Eat the Rich thing, and it was like we didn't give the location till the night. So we had friends on phones, answering phones, telling them the address. So just tell everyone because we can't take every phone call. But it was packed and it was awesome.
That's fucking so cool. Because like when in my day, I guess that none of that was happening because it was so regulated because everyone did it in the 90s and sort of not fucked it up, but like the cops were on it. We had mobile phones. It was easy to kind of track and catch. So I sort of missed the tail end of that. But I never get sick of hearing those stories of like the business card, the text messages in these abandoned buildings, listening to fucking Acid House. I wish I could relive it myself.
It was just like, and we didn't give much thought. Again, this is kind of pre-internet boom and there's no social media. We kind of most of us had mobile phones by the late 90s. But again, we weren't thinking in an entrepreneurial way. We were thinking in how can we just do this so everyone has a great time?
Like opportunistic in a sense.
Totally, but we just wanted to have a good time ourselves.
I guess it's like reflection, right? Like, guys like myself look back at it and we want to hear all these stories and we think it's so cool, but you guys was doing, you said that before when you do DIY music or punk or Acid House or whatever it is, you guys were just doing these things and not reflecting how cool it would be in 10 years time. It was just, you were just a part of it.
We had no fucking idea what we were doing the next week. It didn't even really have a name. Okay, so we got techno out of it. We got Acid House. But we didn't have any thought as to what's going to happen next week. We just had this fearless passion for making and being part of this culture. And like you're saying, that then bred into people who weren't necessarily the direct creatives or auteurs of this, but they just wanted to experience it. And you felt like everyone was your mate. Everyone was your friend, even though you had no idea who they are. It's like, I think even like, my wife many years ago, people would just start talking to me and my wife said, do you know that? I was like, no. It's because someone who may have seen me or what have you. And that was something that I think, don't want to sound like an old man, but I guess that's something that's kind of missing, that there's this kind of genuine, people are just connecting because of what they've seen you do in front of other people, not on the internet or social media. And I'm not ragging out social media. I'm just saying they've seen what you do and they've really connected with it. That's why when I perform, I don't want to perform on stage. I certainly don't perform in a DJ booth. I want to be on the floor with the audience because the audience are part of the performance. To say the audience are separate from the performance that's pre-war fucking shit. You know what I mean? The whole thing about electronic dance music culture, it shifted the paradigm of an artist or artists on stage or the band on stage and the audience watching. So it went to this highly crafted, produced music, which was then pressed to record. Then the DJ would then have the final journey of this music. And the focus of the night became the dance floor, not the performers, because the performers weren't there. The DJ was just a utilitarian provider of broadcasting the music. And it wasn't until the popularity of electronic dances come the late 90s, early 2000s, you have the myth of the DJ. But disco DJs were kind of unheard of. Some of them are almost, they were embarrassed to even have their names, on advertising material. So I think it's interesting how a lot of electronic dance music culture celebrates this artist, or more like, more so the DJ standing up on, this lectern, which is what they do nowadays, because DJs are just portals of social commentary, aren't they, or political information, But that's why I always want to be close to the audience, because even if people don't understand what I'm doing, they can feel an energy and they can see something is happening with machines and cables and what have you. Whereas a DJ, you're completely disconnected. Still to this day, I still, for most of it, you're watching, right? Think about this. You're watching a DJ. What the fuck are you watching when you watch a DJ? I mean, the only caveat for that is hip-hop DJs who are really fucking working out and doing something, and perhaps people such as Jeff Mills who are really improvising. But for the majority of DJs, I still don't understand what people are watching. It's like I'm frustrated. What are you watching? Like, the music might be great. I'm not taking away anything from the music and the programming, but it's kind of odd. But when someone is performing and improvising live, you're seeing someone, perform in the moment. It's very similar to kind of jazz, a jazz musician, but you're seeing someone create the music in front of you based on the, when I perform, based on the energy you're giving back to me. So the audience are highly, they're integral to the performance. If I play a party where there's not many people, that's a shit performance.
True.
Because I need the energy. And I guess that's also, that goes for, say, DJs as well. You still need the audience. But I think that, I think for most part, you understand what I'm saying, is that there's a separation. And I don't think that separation is healthy.
So when it first started, it was all about dance floors. Even now, you talk about shows, iconic shows that you've been to, I've been to. It's always about that dance floor, that moment, the sweat coming off the walls. Like, you don't say that artist or that whatever. He was sort of. It's always about the environment and the impact of the situation you're in. And now it's changed. It's like it's almost gone against what it was about. It used to be about being in a room, being involved in something, and before that was bands, and you'd watch the rock star, like all the I guess the god. And now it's gone back full circle. So even myself, recently I went to a show and it was at Flemington. I'm not going to say who the artist was. And we were there watching a DJ at 9 to 10 p.m. DJ. And I was like, this is fucking odd to me. And I was like, and this is a friend of mine. And I'm like, they're like, why is it odd? I'm like, because this is how we used to watch bands. DJs were sort of, you went to watch in sweaty rooms in underground basements and stuff. And I'm like, the idea that now people are watching DJs like bands is so foreign to myself too. So it's a really, really kind of cool point to hear your reflection on like what it started in, sort of in the early, like late 80s to early 90s to where it's gone now. It's gone full circle. It's actually gone against its own ethos.
If I think of my first memory of hearing early electronic dances like acid house or hip house, it would have been like at Chasers with, say, John Course. And I remember the DJ booth was it was there, but the DJ wasn't very visible. And no one went into the DJ booth. That was a faux pas. If you went to the DJ booth, you were either working or you really knew the DJ. And you would not request a song because you wouldn't know, first of all, what to request. And you'd look like a dickhead. And when we went to these nights earlier on in the late 80s and early 90s, we wanted to be blown away by something we'd never heard before. We didn't hear it on the radio, or there was maybe one or two shows on community radio that you could hear some of this, but not only a very small part. So you relied on the DJs to play and introduce you to new music. And we couldn't write it down, so we had to go the following week. And we wanted something different the following week, or we wanted a different program of that music the following week. And, we would reflect on what they were playing and, that track, but we didn't have a name for that track. And that's the part that became exciting. And so when I was at uni and had access to a studio and some gear, and I started to make this stuff, I think, hang on, this kind of sounds similar to kind of what I'm hearing. And then I sent it off, and next thing you know, it was signed overseas, and the rest is history, and we can say goodbye then. But the point is that I think too much information is spoiling audiences as well.
So dance music used to be about discovery, and no doubt it was the same in the 90s and 80s. Can you run us through why you think that's such a pivotal part of what started the scene in the first place?
Because we didn't have a destination. So when we were doing this and we were part of this, we didn't know what the destination was. So whether we knew it or not, and I'm not saying that we were smart back then, but it was driven by the journey, not the destination. And now we're so informed by everything, DJs are such clever people, and they'll tell us, what we should believe in politically. And that's actually, you could say, okay, but what about punks? Well, punks weren't, they were raising awareness of political issues, but punks don't really do that these days, do they? Sorry, I've gone off on a tangent there. But we were driven by the journey. We didn't know what the next day or the next piece of gear was going to do, or we didn't have much gear at all, like, gear to make music. So that was the exciting part. We embraced that, whether we knew it or not. I think today it's driven by destination. So what do you want to become? What sound do you want to make? Where do you want to play? How do you want to play? And I guess some of those things are important to a certain degree, but for us, we didn't have those opportunities. And nothing came in the way of working hard at it. You had to be in front of people. You had to go make the connection. You actually had to say hello to people. You had to connect with people and not just say how awesome you were, but you actually had to prove it.
And also when you were saying like you're at these clubs like Express, Pure, these raves, like every picture, you're talking about hearing these songs getting kind of fed to you by a DJ. Then to go find those songs, like how did you do that?
For the most part, you couldn't. I remember I played a gig in Sydney. This would have been mid-90s. I was in Sydney. I remember walking into, was it Central Station or another club or bar? And I said, do you have any acid house? I can't remember. And the person behind the counter, I can't remember if it was a shop or a bar or a club, they said, I remember it's like, who listens to that? I'm like, I think I turned around to like, you're a fucking dickhead. Just like straight up, because we didn't really care. Just walked out of the place. But I remember going to, say, Central Station Records in the late 80s, early 90s. First of all, we couldn't buy these records. They were too expensive. So unless you were earning some money as a DJ or you came from rich parents, it was very hard to buy these records because they weren't packaged on a CD as a compilation. As the later 90s came, there was CD compilations, but it was hard to buy these records. You had to keep up with it. And I was fortunate because I worked at Octave Records and I was able to earn a living from it. So I would buy these records. But early on, we couldn't. We didn't have access to those records.
So you had to go out to hear those songs.
Yeah, it was very hard to buy that music as individual tracks. The occasional CD compilation would come up, or you'd have to listen to someone like Kate Bathgate or a show on PBS or Triple R and have your cassette ready to record, or wait till there was like a DJ set on the radio. But I think that came later. That came much later. Sorry. I'm confusing my times.
During these times, like sort of late 80s, 90s again, I know I keep bringing up this period of time, but it's like Berlin was popping off, Detroit's popping off, London's popping off. Why the fuck is Melbourne in the middle of nowhere, not connected to any of these places, 26 hours away at minimum? Why do you think that Melbourne becomes the epicenter of a rave culture for the Southern Hemisphere?
It's a great question that keeps coming up, and I think we all think about and pontificate about it. I think my best answer at this time is Australia's not connected to Europe or North America. Although most of us are children of migrants. So we can synthesize what we're hearing from North America and from Western Europe. And I think that's the privilege of being so isolated in one way, is that we can absorb all this and regurgitate it. Whereas, if you were in Western Europe, if you were in, say, in the UK or Germany, you'd kind of be not stuck, but you were embedded in a particular sound and culture. The same with, say, North America. The word techno was really just an alternative to house music. It wasn't much different at all. It was because Detroit wanted to have a different identity to Chicago. So instead of Chicago had the house sound of Chicago, and when I forgot the guy's name who did the compilation of techno music, it was going to be called the house sound of Detroit, and he changed it at the last second and called it the Detroit sound, the techno sound of Detroit. And that's where the term techno comes into play, and the connection to Detroit. There's more to it, but that's just in a nutshell. So to answer your question, Chicago has house, Detroit has techno, and Melbourne has a fusion of all these things, and that gives us the ability to then cherry pick what we like. I just spat across there, so I hope you caught that on camera. So I think it's also the privilege of being away from all this, but the flip side is that being so far away is hard to connect with distance of Western Europe and North America. But there wasn't a scene in North America. There was a scene in a kind of underground way post-disco. That's why house and Detroit come into play. But it's the kind of English and Western Europe that popularise it, and then it's gone back to America. What do they call it in America now? It's called
EDM.
EDM. Now, if that's not a fucking stupid name, I don't know what is, because EDM for me stands for electronic dance music. So EDM is the Americans discovering rave of the 90s from the UK.
Yeah, well, there you go.
So no, EDM is those people on guitars who then discovered synthesizers.
It comes full circle almost in a sense. But the way it's delivered back to them is kind of too polished, in my opinion.
Yeah, I just think it's a silly genre name. I'm sure there's more of them, but yeah, it's like if you have a look at the genre names of electronic dance music, it's so atomized that I can create a genre right now.
Of course you can, yeah. The offshoots of it are just getting ridiculous now.
Yeah, and it was ridiculous 10 years ago, 20 years ago, but it's even more so now because of people's access to the market, which is a good thing, I'm saying. That's not a criticism.
So Honeysmack, you start doing gigs, right, in the sort of early 90s. Where is your first gig?
Where was my first gig? My first gig was for Mushroom, for a Christmas party for Mushroom. So I've got a record label that I'm being distributed via Mushroom, and they say, well, we've got a Christmas party. Do you want to come and DJ? And I'm like, DJ? How about I perform live? And no one even knew what the word perform live meant. I said, I'll just bring like a drum machine, a synth, and I'll play. Yeah, just 20 minutes or so is cool. So this is actually at the lounge where Filter was, but it was a Christmas party, and it wasn't open to the public. It was Mushroom and their artists and people who worked for Mushroom Publishing and Mushroom Records. So I played, and it was like, okay, this is kind of cool. And I was playing to people who were not, house or techno people whatsoever. This was kind of, semi-corporates in their Mushroom Publishing caps. And it kind of worked. And then Jason and Rod, who were friends, and said, come on, I'll come and do this at Filter. I said, yeah, okay. So they gave me the opportunity and started doing it to techno audiences. And then it kind of went, it kind of blew up. And then from Filter, it then kind of was doing it at Filter quite a bit, and then I went to Revolver as well. So I remember playing, I think I played Revolver's first week. Not the first night, as Camilo tells me. It wasn't the first night, but it was the first week. I remember I played with the Mavises, and Tina, who was doing the booking, wanted to collide genres. And I was interested in playing to rock audiences. I actually wasn't interested. My focus wasn't playing to techno or rave audiences because I thought they'll either love me or hate me. Yeah. So I have nothing more to say to them. Not in an arrogant way, but I just thought, they either like what I do or they don't. And because, again, playing live was a new thing. It was electronic dance. It was performed by the DJ. It wasn't performed with real gear. And so I did it Revolver, and the story goes, it was whatever night it was stinking hot night. It was so packed that even Revolver didn't kind of understand live. What do you mean live? So it was like, I had like a coffee table for a few bits of gear that I had. Got there and I had a sound check earlier that night, but then came back and was just about to play, turned everything on, did my final checks, and friends were busting my balls to get some beers. And Tina said, just tell the staff to give you some beers. It's okay because we don't have drink cards. So I go grab these beers and I said to the staff, Tina said it's okay. They said, who are you? Like, of course, who am I? They don't know who I am. And no one big. And I grabbed $50. I just threw it. I said, just take my money. I got to go because the sound guy's saying to me, can you hurry up? You need to start. And it was just a real slog to get back to the stage because it was just so dense with people. Anyway, I get up on stage, do my final checks. This guy, a bit older than me, comes up to me, grabs me, pulls me close, goes, don't you ever talk to my staff like that again. And I'm like, I'm trying to like apologize. And then he brings me kind of close. He goes, this better fucking work, right? I'm thinking, what the fuck, right? Just put the fear of fucking God in me. I soon found out that was Camilo. So I started playing and Tina said, 15, 20 minutes. That's all I need from you. No problem. I can do that easy. So I'm playing, the crowd goes fucking nuts. I think this is, you're saying like, what was the pivotal point? The Mushroom Christmas party, Filter was great, but this gig at Revolver, I think was a turning point. The crowd were going absolutely nuts that I'm like, whoa, this is fucking incredible. Then I'm looking down and Tina and Camilo are just like crying with laughter and they just can't believe. And Tina's like signaling to me, you got to keep going, you got to keep going. So 20 minutes pass, half a minute passes, 45 minutes, 50 minutes, an hour. And I'm like, you got to remember that what I'm performing with is just, really rudimentary gear. And I'm like fucking exhausted mentally, physically, everything. And I'm saying to Tina, I've got to finish up. This is like over an hour. And she's kind of, you've got to keep going. I'm sorry, you've got to keep going. This is fucking incredible. She's screaming and I'm performing and improvising at the same time. Anyway, it was like an hour and 15, hour and 20 minutes. I said, that's it. I had to stop. And it like, the crowd was just going absolutely nuts. Then Camilla comes up and like gives me a kiss on the side of my cheek, goes, anytime you want to play here, you come speak to me, And the rest, as they say in French, is history.
You talk about playing with the Mavises on that night, that you were looking for rock audiences. I found a video yesterday of you performing on Recovery, right? So for anyone who's comes from that era, that was the most iconic show. It was like the countdown of our generation. How the fuck did that happen? And were you one of the only dance artists to play on that? Because I don't remember dance artists ever being on that channel.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it was my manager, Bianca, at the time, who helped put that together. Yeah, that was live improvised techno with Wojtek and myself. So I think Wojtek just released his album, and I think mine had come a bit prior to that or afterwards. I can't actually remember. And they said, we want you guys, because I played with Wojtek. Wojtek would also play live techno as well, and we would also play a Conversus thing at Filter and at like some other parties, even like Richie's parties. And so it's quite common that both of us played side by side, or sometimes together. And we did some stuff together as well. Wojtek's, incredible live artist as well, improviser. So, it just came about, Recovery wants you to come and play. And it's like, but we don't have songs. We don't have tracks. It's all just fucking improvised. I don't even think Wojtek and I even rehearsed. We just said, all right, I'm going to bring this gear, you bring that gear, we'll hook it up, we'll sync it up. And we set it all up. And it was an incredible set that they did. They had our names fucking massive. It looked great. And they had no idea what they were in for. And the sound guys, the producers are saying, okay, so what are you going to do? I said, like, we're just going to go and you can start fucking filming and then you tell us when to stop because that's how it's going to work, And we did. And we just kept playing until we started playing until they just set up they had the cameras rolling and we stopped when they said, okay, that'll do. So I don't think there's ever been live improvised electronic dance music on Australian TV for some time. I'm not sure up to that point. Definitely not up to that point, I should say. Since then, I can't think of it.
Yeah, neither. So you then go on, you talk about doing these raves and you're playing Filter, Revolver, but then you start playing the Boiler Room at Big Day Out and these rock gigs. Is that after that sort of recovery gig or previous to it? And how did that even happen? Because you think of electronic music these days and they're so separate now, like they've kind of crossed paths throughout their generations and tides, but now they're just two different complete things. At that point, Australian music was popping off like rock bands and stuff, and you're doing this live electronic kind of like punk acid house stuff. How do you then go into the live space when there wasn't really even a thing at the time?
How did I go into the live space as a performer?
Yeah, so like you're more so doing those big shows like, Big Day Outs and those sort of big band heavy festivals that other DJs at the time weren't getting a chance to do.
I think it all comes about very, very quickly. There's no, I can't think of like, what was the trick, what was a specific trigger? It was all these activities. Because I would walk into a room and be so fucking full of myself saying, I'm here. When I play Revolver, I'll be in the front room and I just go bang, bang on the 909 drum machine and everyone would just turn around from even the other room. It's like, I said, yeah, I'm about to play. Why don't you just come in? That's how kind of crude I was and had no fear. So it was about making opportunity by being in front of people. And again, you didn't know who those people were, but of course those people were part of, putting on these big shows on or events on or television or media. It was like, you do lots of shit, something's going to happen. I remember at the same time I was shortlisted for a Coca-Cola ad, like completely beyond my comprehension. But someone through someone else said, you're being shortlisted for a Coke ad. I said, no way. That'd be fucking amazing. See, this is the whole thing. This is the whole irony. You want that notoriety and that kind of commercial viability, but you still want to be embedded and, your foot still stuck in the underground. So it's this kind of push-pull, which is great energy to have. And they never used my music. Because again, it's this improvised, it sounds like a washing machine with a hammer thrown in it in a spin cycle, It's, but the point was, how did this happen? It happened by just maybe through a fearlessness and not worried about what other people think. I think today, critique of today, people are very, creatives and people making electronic music are so concerned about what other people think. I don't think I had time to even, think about what other people thought, which at the time would drive my managers nuts because I didn't care. If it was good or bad, people were saying good things or bad things, it didn't matter. Well, they were talking about me. That's all that mattered. And I can't curate what people will say or not say about me. There was a time when I did the Walk on Acid thing and became a big thing on Triple J, and Triple J called me two Japanese guys, a guy in Sydney, and there was all these different things. And I remember going to a confidant of mine saying, should I be worried? I think it was the only time I was kind of worried about something. So should I be worried about this kind of thing? He goes, why? Who cares? Let the myth, you should pump up the myth. Who cares what they're saying? They're talking about it. It's like, oh yeah, it doesn't matter. Because you can't say, hey, listen, everyone, you can't correct people. So you might as well go with your best foot forward, embrace what you love, what makes you happy, and eventually, or hopefully, that resonates with other groups of people. Now, if you're doing something cool, people who are important will see it eventually. It's like how the Acid Jacks things comes about.
That was my next question. So you just guided me in there. So you obviously are a live musician. You're doing stuff like Recovery, Big Day Out, but you're also playing these like Revolver gigs.
I wouldn't call myself a musician, but thank you. I'll take it.
I'll call you a live musician then. Then you go into DJing, which is something that you weren't necessarily interested in. And you create this thing where obviously Acid Jacks, but you make your own originals. That blows up. It becomes a massive thing in that sort of 2005 era.
Yeah, that's about right. Yeah.
You go into that journey with a partner called Ant.
With Ant,
and that whole experience there, like how was that? And I know that you ended it because it didn't sort of sit with you artistically, I believe. Is that the case? Can you run me through that?
No, I just think it ran its course. I have immense respect for Ant. Is an incredible musician and a great human being. It started by, there was a lull. I wasn't doing Honeysmack. It had all gone, post 2000 was like the doors shut. The deal with Zomba finished up. I was like looking at myself in the mirror thinking like, this is it, it's done. I've got to almost the destination. But I realized I am who I am, I can't change. So Frank and Raf were doing One Love. And Frank and Ant, how I met Ant and Frank, they were doing my artwork as Honeysmack. So Frank's been a close and dear friend, so is Ant. And Frank said, oh, come and play in the back room at One Love. But you can't play anything we play out the front. I said, no problem. I don't have that fucking music, so that's okay. He said you can play any genre you want so long as it's not that kind of, what do you call it, upfront house or whatever. So easy. And Ant was also DJing in the back. So it was Ant and myself. Ant would play and then I would play. And I'd play anything from, hip hop, disco, rock, punk, experimental. It didn't matter. And then Frank would like walk through the back room and Ant and I would be there and like the crowd was just getting bigger and bigger. And then Frank just said, you two got to do something together. So Frank would say. I'm like, okay, cool. So we just started to fuck around. Ant's a very talented guy. He's a great musician. And next thing you know, we're making this kind of fidget house and it starts to blow up. Like there's so many people in the back room that Frank says, okay, you guys are going to have to play in the front room. And I'm like, yeah, but we're fucking playing what we play, not the kind of, So it was a time of experimentation and Frank always loved what I did as Honeysmack and always respected what I did as Honeysmack, even though it wasn't his thing. But then when Ant and I got together, he could see something. And then we started playing at the front and then we became kind of big thing and we were playing everywhere and it was a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun. But again, the caveat was I never really wanted to DJ. It wasn't my thing. But Ant and I made music and how did it end? It ended because I think it just ran its course, I think it ran its course. I think what I started to become exposed to was we were being booked, but people didn't know what they were booking, They just saw a kind of big name and people wanted to hear what they heard on the radio and Ant and I didn't do that. And that was kind of frustrating. Then it wasn't becoming fun. And I thought, I think that's it. And you've got my blessing kind of thing, but I'm kind of done. And again, it wasn't this kind of, deep thought. That was my that's what I did for work. And it was just making me unhappy. And I had to just be honest with myself. I mean, maybe that was selfish at the time. But yeah, Frank and Ant are still, close friends. I respect them, immensely. And they have, they've been part of, One Love has been a very important part of electronic dance music culture in Melbourne and Australia. Frank has always supported, not government agencies. Frank has been a champion. Whether he's been right or wrong, it's irrelevant. He's been a champion of this for a long time. And I think I met Frank doing Kiss FM. Jason and I would do the Acid Agency, which was just crazy. And they wanted to kick us off the air because of how crazy we were. And Frank said, no, if you kick off Acid Jacks, and I heard this through other people. And then my manager at the time, Darren, said, oh, Frank wants you to do the ads for One Love. So I used to do the ads for One Love for the radio. And that's how it all started to come together.
That's crazy. That's such an awesome story of like different generations and different times and moments. We are coming to an end, so I've got one final question. What is Honeysmack doing now? You've had like a bit of a resurgence. There's a lot of eyes on you. You've been doing this for multiple generations. What's next for Honeysmack?
I don't want to disappoint, but it really is the same thing because as an improviser, I'm constantly, trying to make myself happier than the others around me. So it's great that there's this resurgence and that there's lots of people improvising now. So I have, there's lots of people who I kind of mentor. So I'm happy to, share the knowledge. I've been fortunate that throughout my professional history, not just as an artist, it's always evolved around electronic dance music or technology. So I'm still doing it. I also work for a company called Melbourne Instruments, who design and engineer synthesizers and music tech right here in Melbourne. So it's a great privilege to work with them. It's so everything I do is, even though prior working in universities, teaching, composition and music. So it really is, this is who I am. So it's nothing new. It's the same and it's the same trajectory. And, I'm over 50 years old and I never thought that I'd be doing this. I didn't think of any particular age, but this is who I am and I can't remove that. So I'll always make fucking bangers and make techno. Well, it's what I call techno. And I'm very grateful that, there's new audiences and that I can still keep doing this because I actually don't know what else I could do.
Good point. That's a good way to wrap up. I want to say thank you for being interested in electronic music in the 80s, because without guys like yourself and all those people that you don't call a scene but becomes a scene, people like me don't get to live the life that we do. And electronic music is such a big part of the Melbourne ethos. And guys like you did hero it, like regardless if you want to take the credit for it or not. So I just want to say thank you for being so interested in making fucking bangers, because without you, there's probably a plethora of people that get to live this career commercialized now that as it is, but people that were more sort of the punk ethos like us, that were just doing it for fun. People like you don't exist. These guys don't exist still to this day. And hopefully we see the resurgence of this punk stuff again. I think it'll happen over time as the economy, or not the economy, sorry, the kingdom collapses, which no doubt there'll be new things at Ashes. But I want to say thank you, man, for being such a pioneer in this rave scene, because without you, that was maybe not as special.
Well, thank you for raising and, broadcasting these voices. I think it's really important because now we're you're part of that history now because you're documenting it. No one wanted to document it. Oh, there was this thing in the 90s where everyone was doing a documentary on techno. Still haven't seen them, so, but nowadays with your channels, it's like, it's important. So thank you. But we didn't have this, we didn't overthink it. We were in the moment, and that's kind of how I make, produce, and perform. So
love it, man. I love the punk ethos. Like fucking, that's the best part of this.
Just fucking do it. Nike said it. Just fucking do it. Well, they don't say fucking do it, but I'm saying Just fucking do it. If it makes you happy, it's going to make other people happy. I promise you. And if I'm wrong, come punch me in the face. No, please don't. Because
Thank you so much, man. I appreciate your time today.
thank you, Danny.
Legend.
Appreciate it.